and welcome back to HopePod. My name's Claire. I'm back here again with Jim and with Damien, and we're here as HopePod because we are hopeful about the future of the church, and as we're here to serve the mission of God. And we see some challenges ahead that we want to be honest about. We want to come together to learn and to cheer each other on as we face those challenges. We definitely don't have all the answers, and I'm afraid neither do our guests, but we do want to learn together. We want to learn well. So we are inviting some people along this learning journey with us. And in this series, we are inspired by Blackburn Diocese's vision to unlock after a long period of being shut down through the COVID-19 pandemic. So in each episode, we will take a little time to lament. We'll give thanks for some of the surprising things that have been along the way, and we will be looking forward towards the new missional opportunities. So if you want to join the conversation, you're more than welcome to. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can leave us a comment in the chat. If you're listening along on a podcast, then do drop us an email at hopepodlancs@gmail.com. Or you can just find a friend and either make them or buy them a drink and sit down and have a chat together and join in the conversation that way.
Did you just say make them buy me a drink?
No, make them or buy them.
Make them a drink. Right, okay, sorry.
It's a good idea.
Make them a drink.
Make them buy you a drink. You will buy me a drink.
No, make them a drink or buy them a drink and have a good chat. Well, today's episode is titled Embracing Marmite. We might love or hate social media, but how can we use it for the glory of God? So today we've brought along our friend Ian, who's going to join the conversation. Hi Ian, good to have you joining us on Zoom today.
Hi Claire, great to be here, even if it is digitally.
Fantastic, so good. Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you? What are you up to these days?
So I'm Ian. I'm serving as a curate in the beautiful market town of Clitheroe, and I say I'm serving my curacy at St James's Church in Clitheroe.
Fantastic. And Ian, tell us a little bit, what do you kind of get up to on social media? What are your things that you like to do there?
So I mean, personally, I like to do it anyway. I like just to tell as many people as I can what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about it. But then since the pandemic hit, as part of church, there was obviously some things that were lost and we had to change the way we do things. So then we realized that there was a real opportunity in connection through social media. And we already had a presence anyway, but we were just much more intentional about how we used it, how we engaged with people, how we engaged with a wider demographic. And we almost identified a new congregation of people that were watching online, because we had more people watching when we weren't having in-person services than we did have coming when we were having in-person services. So we recognized that there was people watching that didn't come before.
And so I'm just going to ask you the divisive question now. Social media, do you love it or do you hate it?
I love it. Absolutely love it. And it's like a lot of things that there's negative sides to it and different things that are challenging. But as a tool and a resource, I think it's magnificent.
Yeah.
Magnificent. I think it's good.
It's magnificent.
Jim, what about you? Love or hate social media?
See, I use social media a lot for business as well. And I think what I find draining about social media is the vastness of it. So having a presence on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn nowadays as well has become something that I've networked more with people, especially from a business point of view. So it can be a bit of a drain in terms of time and effort from that side of things, making sure that your content's up to date and your almost online portfolio is up to date. But it's also one of the most useful tools. Everyone's got a family WhatsApp. My family, I'm from down south, came to evangelise the north years and years ago. And in fact, later on this month, I've actually lived in the north longer than the south, which Claire seems to think that will make me a northerner.
Yeah.
An adopted northerner.
Adopted.
Yeah, you'll never be true northern. Jim.
But all of the rest of my family, my brothers and my mum and dad still live down south. So actually, for us to be in each other's lives day to day, Facebook has been a godsend in terms of that, feeling part of what they're up to and seeing, you know, my parents being able to see the photos of the kids growing up, and, you know, WhatsApp to keep in touch with each other and just feel like you're part of each other's lives is a really special thing, but also can be really infuriating when it's misinterpreted, or you know, you can't express in text the way that you would in person, can you? And sometimes things can be misread, or so there is that to and from, isn't it, of understanding how social media works in our lives, that means that you use it in a certain way, and if you're using it in that certain way with that kind of understanding, then actually it's a really good tool for...
How about you, Damien? Love or hate?
Well, I tolerate it.
Okay.
Is that a good answer? No, I'm not sure. I love Marmite, by the way.
Okay.
In fact, I have a Marmite joke. Can I tell you my Marmite joke?
Of course, yeah.
You might not like Marmite, but your Marmite.
Oh, good
thank
one.
you for laughing.
Your
That's a joke.
Marmite.
Yeah, your Marmite.
Is that a northern?
It is probably a northern joke that southerners don't get, you know. Sorry to those who have now switched off the HopePod because of my bad joke. So I love Marmite, but no, I tolerate social media. I never liked it growing up, and but I've come to accept that it is a necessary tool, and it is part of everyday life. But I have gone on a journey recently. I've realised that social media is much wider than what I initially thought. I used to always think of just Facebook as being social media. But now my son, who's 17, he's not interested in Facebook. He wants to go on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I realise now that a lot of Facebook users are actually my age,
Yeah.
but the younger guys are on other things. So there's a lot more to it than just Facebook, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, that's the thing that I hate about it, because just when you think that you've got a grasp on what social media is and how to be there, a new platform pops up. Yeah. I haven't got a clue about Snapchat. I feel like every time I look at it, I just feel really old, and that's part of the thing that makes me dislike social media, because it reminds me that maybe I'm not 21 anymore, and my kids have got so much to teach me about that stuff that I've got no clue about. Feels like an alien world at times, doesn't it?
Me and Sarge are down with the kids, aren't we? We're on TikTok.
Snapchat is the worst of all social media platforms, but TikTok, that's where it's at.
That's the sweet spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can just show off a little bit.
Yeah.
So my question is this. So like I said before, we're looking at all of this stuff through the kind of lens of this, the vision that Blackburn Diocese have given us about unlocking. And, you know, let's be honest, it's been a really tough year and a half, hasn't it? There's been countless challenges that we've faced, and so much that we've lost over the last year as well. And I think before we kind of launch forwards into this kind of new world, this new way of gathering together both in person and online, and kind of, you know, just working out the new social rules even, it's really important for us to pause for a moment and just consider, what have we lost? What's kind of changed from a year and a half ago to now? And obviously in this episode we're particularly thinking about social media. So Ian, you know, is there anything that you kind of see? Has social media changed in any way in this last year where we've lost some things along the way, do you think?
I can't think of anything. I can think of what we've lost in person, but I can't think of what we've lost through social media, if I'm honest. So I know that's not a great answer for discussion, but I just can't think of anything within social media that's lost. I just think there's more opportunity developed. There's emergence of different things. New other churches that perhaps weren't that invested previously have had to get involved with Zoom or with Facebook or streaming their services somehow. So I think we've gained far more than I can identify that we've lost.
Mm-hmm. How about you guys?
Opportunity, I think, is the right word. Opportunity rather than gaining anything, because obviously it's a terrible situation, but it's presented opportunities.
Yeah. How about you guys? Do you see has social media changed at all in this last year?
Yeah, I've noticed people that have come on social media more than they would have done in the past. So I can think of church members who are now regularly watching live streams on Facebook, who weren't really engaging with it much before. So there have been positives in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was to identify something that we've lost, I think we've lost the ability to speak well to each other. We've lost, in a few extreme circumstances, we've lost the ability to disagree well. Social media can be a very dysfunctional place. It's that anonymity again, where you don't feel like you're held to account for the comments that you make, and sometimes you would say something that maybe you wouldn't say to someone in person. And again, if something's misread because it's in text form, emojis, as annoying as they are, actually do add some sort of, if there's a winking emoji, it's light-hearted. But I think, I see a lot of, and in the media we see it as well, don't we, where people just lose their ability to be compassionate. You respond in the moment, and I've had situations where, not for me personally, but things have happened at events or work things that I've been on, where somebody's responded in the moment on Twitter in the instant because they're cross that something's not gone the way they wanted. But then if you read down their Twitter feed, about 20 minutes later, they've put out a tweet saying this is the best thing in the world ever. But in that moment, it's not a conversation. It's not like a to and fro. It's here's my statement, and I'm in this very moment, I'm cross, and so I'll be cross on social media. It's a weird thing to watch people disagree, but not be able to resolve that. It feels like you have to have the last word, and I think sometimes the way that people use social media is that's been lost, and I think we have to relearn that in a totally different way than if we were in person.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. And one of the things that people can do now is they can turn off comments, can't they?
Yeah.
And so I'm part of a few communities in our local area of Facebook groups, and you can, when things get a bit heated, the admin can just go, turn off comments. Yeah. And that's not what the real world's like, is it? No. Conversations continue. But like you say, people can get heated, they can just, say stuff that's quite black and white, and then someone has to then intervene, and that's not a great atmosphere, is it really? No. That doesn't glorify God, I don't think.
No.
And people can also be quite forceful even if I agree with their especially on YouTube, you get people commenting the comments about God and everyone needs to turn from their sin. Totally agree with that, but it's not necessarily the way that I would communicate that in person or online. And I think it's a really tricky place to be sometimes as church leaders, as people of faith. How do you make sure that people feel heard, where if they aren't shouting the loudest because they're lost in amongst all the comments?
I think that reminds us, doesn't it, that behind social media are real people. Absolutely. Sat at real computers or devices, handsets, whatever, and we as a whole nation are struggling at the moment, aren't we? Our patience is running thin because maybe we are, experiencing more stress at home or at work or whatever, and that stress has got to come out somewhere, hasn't it? And the other thing I've noticed is, normally pre-pandemic on, my social media platforms that I'm on would be Facebook and Instagram. And some of that more political stuff or the kind of personal things that come out, like we've just discussed, the high tension stuff, are kind of punctuated with things like, oh, we went to this concert, or we had this party, or look at my holiday that I've just been on, or whatever. And of course, none of us have been doing any of those things. So there's been a lack of balance, hasn't there, in my social media feed anyway, that, it's been more, oh, it's been really hard. And that's important to hear that, because that's the truth. That's the honest picture of where we are as a nation. But it does make for a more intense place, doesn't it? And that can be a hard place to be. I think for me, it's left me feeling a bit like, I don't know if this is a place I want to be sometimes, and I'm pulling back from social media because it's really tough to be there at times, isn't it? But
especially those who don't feel they have the loudest voice and aren't the ones who are going to leave a comment on Facebook that's kind of, black and white heated. They go to Facebook for community and for inspiration and support. And actually, if they go to Facebook or Instagram and it's just all negative, and that's more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's definitely different audiences across the different platforms. I don't know if you guys find that, but I don't go on Twitter very much, but when I've been on, you can definitely get stuck down a wormhole.
Twitter storm,
Yeah.
get caught up.
Whereas Instagram seems to be a much more positive place where people encourage each other, and generally TikTok again is a bit more playful. LinkedIn is a bit more business orientated. It's not really a personal place to be. Facebook can be a mash of all of it.
I find Twitter is probably the most difficult to navigate, particularly I think because it doesn't have an edit function. Do you know what I mean? So if you want to change what you said and it's there and people will take it however they'll take it, and it's probably the most toxic. I think I get most of my cardio during the week through shaking my head at my TikTok feed. And it's the one where I definitely notice more that I'm about to tweet something and think, no, delete. It's just not worth it. And sadly, I think Christian Twitter is one of the worst. It's one of the most divisive and seem to be arguing, and I don't always think it's a positive, and that's not a generalization, but there's always a positive representation of what church should be, even through the pandemic, even discussing, the Eucharist or whether we should sing in church, or there wasn't always a lot of grace when discussing that.
So we've, that's really important actually, to stop and get a real picture of kind of where we're at in terms of society online in our social media. But what's been gained? Because I think there have been also some gains, haven't there? It might be that we've discovered new platforms or new spaces, but I wonder what have been the surprises along the way that we think, oh God, that's a really good positive outcome actually, or new growth. Is there anything new for you, Ian, that you sort of spot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to identify was that we gained, to use a social media term, we gained followers. There was people engaging with us online that weren't engaging before. And I think sometimes if we're involved in church and church culture, we can forget how difficult it is for people to cross that physical threshold and come into a service. But when it was more or less shut down, people could peek, people could have a look without that awkwardness. They could just come in through the curtain, and there was more choice because maybe a lot of people's local churches were streaming services now. So we found that we gained more people across the platforms, engagement on social media, watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook, commenting. So we gained a lot from that. And then at the other things such as Christmas, then we gained the opportunity to go into people's homes rather than simply inviting them to the church building. So that was a great thing. We had to think about that. So we gained that. And Jim and I were involved in something where we did a nativity, it was almost mocking social media to a degree and how we found ourselves. But ironically, it was seen by thousands and thousands of people. Whereas if we'd put it on in a church hall somewhere, it wouldn't have gained that traction. So I think we gained so much opportunity and engagement with a lot of that. And it was just easier for people to access church, which is ironic and crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. Do you think that's given you space to be creative in a different way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's changed the way that we engage on Facebook, particularly because beforehand, almost, even though it was a public Facebook page, it was church content. So it was like, what did you think of the sermon? And now we realize that people that are watching that don't come to church didn't have an opinion on that. But when you ask them, what's your favorite biscuit? Everyone has an opinion. And that was a way of getting people engaged initially, to speak to them, to identify them, to build community. What do you call a bread bun? That was the one. It went off the scale in terms of interactions, and I want to say playful banter, but a bit of people really passionate about why it's not called a tea cake and stuff. But stuff like that, it changed the way that we do everything on social media, particularly our Facebook page.
Yeah, that's really fascinating actually saying that, because one of the things I think that we've maybe missed with doing church services online, one of the things we often hear is that the thing that we miss is the human contact between people, you know, and it is those, what you chat about over coffee and, you know, the stuff that kind of is about we as people just coming together and sharing life together, isn't it? You know, that yes, we come and worship, but community happens in those other conversations as well, isn't it? So that's really interesting that you found that that's the thing that people want to engage with, is not, you know, a deep theological discussion about whatever, but what's your favourite bread or what's your favourite biscuit? That's really interesting, isn't it? That
well, it's something everybody's got an opinion on it, and they don't feel intimidated. So if you say, who's your favourite minor prophet, then people get a bit edgy. Even I do you know what I mean? In case I give the wrong answer, I'm still scared of stating some heresy. But if it's something that's accessible for everyone, then you're not differentiating. So it just helps, and it also helps for those that don't go to church historically to engage with that, because they have an opinion.
I think also we talk in church, don't we, about going out and reaching your community, your friends or your work colleagues, and social media does provide a place where actually evangelism can be really easy, because if you find a great video that is a nativity that kind of shares the story in a fun way, all you've got to do to evangelize, to share the good news of what that is about, is click the share button. You don't even have to comment on it. You just share it, and your name appears above it, and off it goes to your friends and followers. Yeah. And I think sometimes, well, maybe it's a case of do we hold different identities in person and online? You know, if I've got a business personality online, then would I share something that is very personal to me in terms of my views? Would I share it in a different platform thinking, well, what will people think of me? And actually, we're in that scenario anyway in person, aren't we? It just is that we build up the confidence to share the good news of Jesus. Whereas if somewhere or a church is making content that is made to be shared, to provide some decent content that says, you know, share this, you know, put it out there, and then maybe you'll have conversations with friends afterwards in person or online or whatever it is, then there's that ability that is so simple to just hit one button and off it goes to thousands of followers or people. And the sharing thing actually, from a church perspective, if you're trying to grow your congregation, if you're trying to not grow your kingdom as such, but if you're trying to grow your reach of who it is that you're kind of speaking to each week, is a great place. And also there's the ability to be able to go to multiple church services if they're online. You know, we listen to podcasts, we listen to worship songs all over the place, but we only go to one church on a Sunday. And that's not necessarily wrong or right, but the ability to go to a church that you would never be able to get to in person on a Sunday during the week is a great tool, isn't it?
I like that. So you're connected to a local church, committed to local church, but actually you're aware of the whole kingdom more, because social media can connect you to a wider group of Christians, can't it?
Well, and as a church leader, is it your responsibility to develop your congregation's faith, or is there an element of, as an individual, there is so much available to you to develop your own faith and to find things, and then come to you as a church leader and say, oh, I saw this, have you seen this, what do you think, and start those conversations, isn't there? Rather than all the pressure being on the vicar who is responsible for my faith and my journey. Actually, I, as a congregation member, need to take some authority and some ownership of my faith.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think one of the difficulties is that particularly new Christians might not have a lens to know is this good stuff or not good stuff. But you're right, people should have responsibility for their own daily walk with God. So maybe I like what you said before, creating stuff that can be shared. or actually pointing people to stuff from the wider kingdom of God. I think it's a good thing to do. Yeah.
And that's part of this message of hope, isn't it? You know, that as we're looking at the Blackburn vision of unlocking after being in lockdown for so long, that this isn't just about survival, it's about the church really thriving and growing in mission. And, you know, and I wonder if this kind of, you know, social media as a platform actually can help us to sort of break down this barrier that sometimes is between my life and my church life, that, you know, you can totally have one post that says, what kind of bread do you like, or what do you call this bread, you know, or whatever, and by the way, I saw this really brilliant adaptation of the Nativity, you should have a look at it. And it kind of makes our life a bit of a kind of soupy mix of, well, this is who I really am. And that's always the challenge on social media, isn't it? Is that we can be guilty of just wanting to give our best side.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we're willing to be fully ourselves, who deal with the everyday mundane stuff, who have holidays or take photos of our family and friends, and who love Jesus, and we're willing to be fully ourselves, then that's an amazing kind of missional opportunity. Like you say, that's quite easy to just say, I'll just hit share on this thing, and not being embarrassed to do that. I don't know, what are your thoughts, Ian? Like, what are the kind of missional opportunities you see?
Yeah, I think it does give an opportunity. As I said, it almost gives a window into the church, because so often I think people now, particularly that I think the generation now, less and less people have gone to church historically. A lot of them, it will be the only contact they will have with church is possibly through school, possibly through a youth work. Not a lot will go to Sunday school. The parents will send them to Sunday school or different, you know, uniformed groups. So I think it does open that way, because I think people have preconceived ideas of what church is. And there's a big divide, and we need to make sure the church relatable. So not in terms of just attractional with no substance. As you're saying, it's a balance between going, yeah, we do have this message, but we also have this vehicle for communication. But we also want to show you that we're not what you think we are, or we might not be what you think we are. We might not be all sitting around singing "Come By Our" clashing cymbals and stuff. Although if you do that, that's fine. But we want to challenge those stereotypes and say, look, we've got so much going on for your children, for the families. If you're in debt, we've got groups that can help you. So yeah, I think it gives a window in that, in a way, again, I said before, that is non-threatening for people. They don't have to physically come in, go through that discomfort of not knowing how things work, of being pointed out or asked to stand up because they're newcomers. They can just come and have a look, or they can follow a Facebook page or a Twitter account or an Instagram, and then there's no cost to them, but they can like what they like, they can engage. So yeah, I think missionally, it's a great tool if we use it right.
Sorry, do you think that in church culture now, there seems to be quite a big thing about having a decent website, and I think that has its place and is important. But churches will spend money on building a website. Social media, to an extent, is totally free, and actually can be something that is used and updated quicker and easier. Do you think that should have, or has the possibility of having as important a place as a website, or, you know, from a digital point of view?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I know that personally, in my situation, we've put more effort into our website than Facebook. And that's because I think I'm just behind a little bit by probably quite a few years, always trying to catch up with these things. And but yeah, I think it, like you said, it's pretty easy to update stuff on Facebook or other social media platforms, but it's an easier way to communicate, isn't it? People can scroll through their feed, and, you know, the church can pop up on their feed with a latest video or news story. So I think there's a lot we could do better. I know that, certainly for me, that's the case. I could do a lot better with social media than what I do already.
Yeah, I think Facebook page is just easier to update. I think 90% of the church websites I go on, the data is outdated. you know, so you want to find stuff, it's like Alpha Course, come in January 2019, you know what I mean? Or this person works there, and you know that they don't. And particularly I see this a lot, and maybe I'll do it when I get an incumbency or whatever. The picture of the vicar or the rector is from 25 years ago. Now, I know that's intentional. It's like, come on. But the data is very often just outdated, and then that makes me switch off immediately. Whereas a Facebook page, it's just, you know what they've communicated lately. And I will often check when was the last post to see how well they're updating, whether I'm going to continue engaging with that or not.
Yeah. And the clue's kind of in the title, isn't it? It's social media. So a website is, here's like a notice board, come and get some information. Social media is an invitation, isn't it? Come and be part of our community, come and join in the conversation, or, you know, this, like you say, this is what we're up to today. This is
the
what
challenge
we're
that
doing
I
today.
find is I tend to treat Facebook and other things like it's a website. And I treat it like an information board or a notice, you know, board, and I forget it's social. There should be interaction. I should be encouraging that. So I've got a lot of work to do there.
As we said, it's
We're
not
not
the
really
answer, is it? No, the answers aren't here.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I think that's a really good point for us to just pause on this conversation. I'm sure there's so much more that we could say, both in person and online, and keep these conversations going. Ian, thanks so much for coming and joining with us. That's been a really rich conversation, I think. Just before we finish our podcast today, we're just going to take a minute to just be quiet before we race off and, you know, go into our next task that we've got to do, or hop onto social media and think, oh, I better update my profile picture because it's from 25 years ago. Let's just take a minute just to pause, because, you know, this is a time where we're thinking and asking God, really, what's the way forward? You know, what's the way out of this season of lockdown? And what are we doing going forwards? And so let's just take a minute to pray, shall we? And just reflect on our conversation we've had. So it might be that as we come to the end of our time here, there may be things that we've done or said or seen on our social media platforms that have hurt us. Maybe we've got caught up in conversations that have got a bit heated, and we lament that. We lament that it's become maybe a place that can be difficult to be there. Let's just take a moment to be quiet with God and acknowledge that to him, and ask him for his forgiveness if we need it. Ask him for his healing if we need that too. God, we do recognise that it's tough at times to be on social media. And so we do just ask for your protection over our hearts and our minds. Would you guard us, help us to be good representatives of you, to be kind and gentle in the way that we are on social media. Protect our hearts when others perhaps are a little bit unkind or not gentle with us. Help us to be brave, to return back to that space, to be witnesses of you. And let's also give thanks for the opportunities that we've had. Maybe we've discovered a new social platform and found some new area to have fun or to reconnect with people. Maybe we want to give thanks for the times when we felt totally separated in life from people, and social media actually became a bit of a lifeline for some of us to be connected in our communities. So let's just take a minute to give thanks for that. So God, we do thank you for the gift that technology is, for all the ways in which, even though our church buildings have been shut in seasons over this last year and a half, that the church has still been open and active in these online spaces. Thank you for the gifts and talents of those people who really understand the technology to make it work and open up this new world to each of us. Thank you for the way that we've met new people, that others have been able to attend church that maybe would never have done so in person. So we give you thanks for that, and we ask you to bless our online spaces and open them up to us even more. And maybe just in this final moment, think about what is the message of hope that we take to the online spaces. How is Jesus sending you back out to there? And that's the question really that we want to leave you with. So you might want to take a few minutes and just prayerfully ask God, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? Who are you sending me to? And what is the message of hope in Jesus that I take to that space? We're going to finish there. Thank you so much for coming and being part of the conversation, Ian. Thank you, Jim and Damien as well. Don't forget that you can leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Do leave comments if you've got thoughts or things that you want to add to the conversation. If there's other topics that you want to hear there to be conversations about in the future, do let us know, or you can email us at hopepodlancs@gmail.com. But that's it from us for today. We will be back next time. Good to see you all.